What are the key skills in fast breaststroke? Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. In this video, we're going to start a series on the skills of breaststroke and what they look like in simple terms. Specifically today, we're going to talk about upper body propulsion and how to create a more effective arm pull. The purpose of a great arm pull is to move more water backward, and the more water a swimmer can move backward, the faster they can move forward. So what swimmers have to do is orient their arms in a way that allows them to move a lot of water backward and do so at a pretty high tempo and do so with pretty good efficiency. Because if they can't move a lot of water backwards, they're going to struggle. If they can't move a lot of water backwards pretty quickly, they're going to struggle. And if they can't do so efficiently, they're going to get really tired really fast. And so for those reasons, swimmers tend to adopt a pretty similar strategy for executing breaststroke pulls, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. And as we go through, there are three key skills that swimmers need to execute. They need to create a big surface area with their arm in order to move a lot of water backwards. The bigger the surface area, the more effectively they're going to be able to move water with each stroke. They need to move that surface area backwards for as long as possible in order to move as much water for as long as possible. And lastly, they need to accelerate the arm through the pull in order to create more speed. So let's check it out and see what it looks like. All right, so when swimmers set up their stroke, what they're doing in the front half of the stroke is they're creating a surface area that involves the whole hand and the whole forearm that can be moved backwards. And so you can see that position here. They're moving the hands and they're getting the arms in a position where they can be oriented backwards. And so that's the first key skill that swimmers need to execute when they set up the stroke. So when they're sliding the hands out, what they're doing is they're popping the elbows up, they're letting the hands come down so that they can create a big surface area with the arm and the hand to create a lot of propulsion and move water backwards. So we'll see it again here, and then they're sliding out, and then you can see, because just remember we're at an angle from underneath, he's got a big surface area with that whole forearm, and it's moving backwards. You can see right there, the whole forearm is moving backwards effectively. So we'll pay attention to the same thing with another swimmer, and you can see here, it's a little bit more exaggerated. She's got a little bit wider pull, but you can see she's moving from the hands out in front to getting the forearm in position where it can effectively move water backwards in addition to the hand. So by this position, she's got it pretty synced up so that a lot of surface area is moving backwards. And the more effectively she can do that, the more water she's going to be able to move backwards. And so she does a really good job with that. You can see right in there in that position, she's set up to move a lot of water backwards. Right there, you can see the forearm and the hand are going to be used as a surface area to create a lot of propulsion. So the next piece of it is moving that surface area backwards for as long as possible. Now obviously in breaststroke, the stroke gets cut off pretty early. However, you can still create a pretty large range of motion even with that limitation. So we'll watch that here. So he's in a pretty good position by right about here, and it's moving backwards, straight backwards, all the way till right about there. So if you watch his elbow, it's coming in pretty close to his body. He's basically squeezed as much as he can out of it. The only difference from here, he could extend his arms, but that wouldn't create that much propulsion because he's got most of the propulsion using the muscles of the chest and the back. So again, he's setting it up here and then pulling straight back all the way right to there, and that's when he ends the stroke so that he can recover the arms. So still a pretty big surface area. And just think about it, if that was butterfly, he's halfway through the pull of butterfly at least before he starts to turn things in and recover the arms. So pretty long surface area, and it's not this sculling motion that's just happening with the hands. You can see the elbows are moving backwards, and that means there's a full backwards pull. The elbows are way out in front and they're squeezing all the way back. That's going to create a lot of propulsion, and it's a pretty big range of motion that he's using there. So we'll watch the same thing in a second athlete. So it sets up there and then squeezing all the way back there, and now she's recovering the arms. So the same thing, she's pulling the elbows back pretty far. She's squeezing all the way, getting a full pull out of it, and then recovering the arms. So right there, that's when she finishes the pull. And so again, the elbows are moving pretty far back. It's over a pretty far range of motion. And so wherever the elbow goes, the forearm goes, so that forearm's moving back over a pretty far range of motion, and that's going to create a lot of propulsion. So it's pretty simple. Get the forearms facing backwards and then pull back as long as they can until they have to recover the arms. Right here to there, it's a straight backwards pull. From right there, it almost looks like butterfly. It is pretty similar to butterfly. Right there, she's pulling herself back, and you can see the acceleration of her body forwards as a result of that backwards pull. So she's starting to hold water here and then ripping it straight back to there. We'll see it one more time, ripping it straight back to there. So it's key to create a big surface area and then move it for as long as possible to create as much propulsion as possible. So the last thing we want to pay attention to is accelerating the arms. So not only do they want to move water backwards with a big surface area over a long period of time, they want to accelerate that to maintain pressure and continue to create propulsion. And so it's patience, and then you can see right there, there's an acceleration through the back of the stroke. So it's patience when he sets it up, and then he accelerates through the pull, and he really gets it ripping as the arms close into the body. So right there, you can see the acceleration. So right there's that acceleration of the pull. And because the pull isn't that long in terms of how long it takes and the range of motion that it goes through, because the hands aren't moving all the way down to the hips, it's going to be a pretty short range of motion, but the acceleration is going to happen fast. Right there, you can see he picks it up right there. So the more that swimmers can accelerate the pull, the more speed they're going to create, and that's ultimately going to allow for faster swimming. So watching with another athlete here, patience and then acceleration, patience and then acceleration. And so once she gets into that position where she sets up the stroke, right there, now she's accelerating and ripping it back. You can even start to see the cavitation pick up right there. She kind of separates from the bubbles a little bit because that's when she really starts to crank on it. That's when she really starts to accelerate the arms. So setting up and then accelerating the pull, set it up and then accelerating the pull. And that's going to create the most propulsion, getting a big surface area, a long range of motion, and really accelerating it. There was one more aspect of the pull that I want to touch on, and that's kind of the muscles that are driving the pull and the actions that facilitate the use of those muscles. So the biggest muscles and the strongest muscles of the upper body are your chest, your pec muscles, and then the muscles of your upper back, your lat muscles on the side. When those muscles are working, swimmers are going to be able to swim faster because they can create a lot more force. Because those are big muscles, they can be used over the course of an entire race. And while, of course, they're going to fatigue in a way that still allows swimmers to perform. So one of the things I want you to pay attention to is when the armpit is open, these muscles are on stretch, and that means they can be contracted. And so by closing the armpit, we're squeezing those muscles, and that's going to create a really strong pull. And so what we'll watch here with breaststroke is essentially what they do when they execute the skills we've discussed earlier is they open the armpit up. We'll be able to see that big space in here. And then when they pull, they close that armpit down. So we'll watch here as he sets up the stroke. As you can see here, there's a lot of space in his armpit here. And then as he pulls, it all closes down and disappears. And then he goes back, sets up the stroke again. And so right as he sets it up, he's created a lot of space in that armpit here, and then he's going to close it back down. And so that's the key skill, using those muscles and then creating a situation where the armpit is open, they're still in an effective pulling position, the forearms facing backwards, and then from that position, they can squeeze and pull everything through. We'll take a look at it from another view here so you can see the open armpit aspect of it. And so as this swimmer sets up the pull, you can see right there, there's a lot of space in there. You can even see her shoulder blades start to pop out because they're on stretch. It's opened up. And then as she pulls, squeezes closed, you can see that space is really open there. All of a sudden it closes down and then it disappears. And that's because she's created a strong pull using the strongest muscles of the body. So when she sets it up, there's a lot of space, especially right there. And then squeeze, pull, closes it all down. And you can see the acceleration of the body as a result of that. She's coming forward, she's coming up, and that means that she's creating speed. So an interesting way to think about that, if your swimmers aren't creating situations where they're opening up the armpits and then squeezing them through, they probably have things to work on in terms of improving their pull. And that could be either they're not creating a big surface area, they're not pulling backwards, they're not accelerating the hands. And so it's a great way to kind of think about things, especially from the perspective of which muscles are really driving the show and which are creating a lot of propulsion. So we'll take a look at this one more time in this swimmer. And as you can see, big space here. There's a lot of space in that armpit. And then boom, she squeezes, closes it off, executes a great pull. Same thing, sets it up, a lot of space, and then boom, squeezes it through, executes a great pull. So ultimately, the breaststroke pull is not particularly complicated. they need to create a large surface area using the hand and the forearm, setting it up so they can move a lot of water backwards. Then they need to take that surface area and move it backwards for as long as they can, accelerating the hand as they go. And when they do that, they're creating a lot of space, they're opening up the armpit, and they're really squeezing it through and using the strongest muscles of the upper body in order to power that pull. So hopefully that was helpful, and as always, keep it simple.